exploration, encounter, exchange, the fundamental theme to any developing idea. This obviously does not exclude film, our topic. For centuries, scientists and mathematicians have been experimenting with images and neurological behavior to create what was known to be moving pictures, and way before that, we had more people still trying to create still images. Centuries of exploring new techniques, encountering sudden discoveries, and exchanging those techniques and discoveries with other colleagues to further advance their craft.
We didn't just want to stick to the theme, though. We wanted to make a point, one that should be heard by all moviegoers. We want everyone to know that filmmaking is an extraordinarily complex and difficult art that really only certain people can do.
The message that we want to convey is that film isn't just a quick one-shot video. It's a language. It's the cinematography, the acting, the editing, the story. It's the countless hours of work and effort put in by countless people to make a cinematic masterpiece. This is ours.
We're going to be covering 3 different aspects of film.
The history, the process, and the techniques. Like Dylan said earlier, we didn't just want to teach you about the history or the process, we want to teach you about the techniques as well. That way you know how they do it and what rules they apply into making their films.
But before we start, we have to clear up one small detail. Due to our topic being so complex and the 10-minute time limit, we won't be able to include all of our information. And believe me, if we did, we could blast right through that 10-minute and probably go into several hours if we weren't careful. And believe me, we were.
Now with the introduction out of the way, let's get started with the first part of our journey, the history.
We start in 180 AD. The zoetrope, the earliest record of any resemblance to film, was invented by Tim Huang. The contraption employed persistence of vision, a neurological concept that stated that the brain remembers what it sees. This, combined with a series of moving images, created an illusion of moving images.
Now let's fast forward through time to 1826 with the first picture ever taken. Then in 1860, the first audio recording, a woman singing Autor de la Lune, the Lumiere brothers. The brothers had a family business that had grown into the largest manufacturer of photograph plates in Europe. Then in February 13th, 1895, made the cinematograph, which at the time was the only device capable of shooting, developing, and projecting film. Then, on March 19th, 1895, they would make the first film ever. It was workers leaving the Lumiere factory. Logistically, the films were very boring and only using a tableau shot, which was just one shot that would cover the entire scene. It stayed like this until 1910 when the Americans changed it up. Unfortunately, the brothers didn't see any future in film, so they stopped focusing on it and moved to bigger, better things. Then George Méliès, a magician who owned his own theater, tried to buy the cinematograph off the Lumiere brothers, but they wouldn't sell. So being a mechanic, Méliès made his own by reversing the mechanics of an English-made camera. One thing that got him to really start working on continuity editing was when his camera jammed when filming and caused him to make one of the first parts of editing, which we will go into further detail later. He would use this to make disappearing and reappearing effects in films. Using his past experiences as a magician, he created the fade in and fade out overlapping dissolves in stop motion photography. This helped push film forward, but he still used tableau shots. On top of that, he would never move the camera, going so far as to move the set instead. But like several other entrepreneurs in that time, he got screwed by Edison. Edison did this by pirating Méliès' film, A Trip to the Moon, and distributing it across America, something that Méliès planned on doing himself. And because of Edison, Méliès' film career died. The movie Hugo was about that, except Méliès never went back to filmmaking and died alone. That's
depressing,
dark.
But yeah. D.W. Griffith was called the father of film, and for good reason. He threw objectivity out the window. He instead used subjectivity to give the films heart and emotion. He would use filters, close-ups, highlights on important objects, blacking out part of the screen. That's called a vignette. He would also make several new techniques like the crane shot, or something that is used in nearly every movie today, especially action movies, is attaching a camera to a moving car, which at the time was new, but nowadays is something that's very commonly used. Or he would use soft light focus to romanticize an actress, or using high and low shots to make people look important or insignificant, respectively. and many more like the 180-degree rule, intercutting, and much, much, much more.
The reason all of these things became so popular is because of Birth of a Nation, which had the longest runtime of any movie, clocking in at 3 hours and 10 minutes. But sadly, all good things came to an end. His fatal mistake, Intolerance, which had original length was 8 hours, cost $2.5 million to make. Now that's nothing, but then that was massive. Even after cutting 5 hours of his film off, it still bombed. And after that, he made about 26 more movies and died, paying off Intolerance's death.
Okay, so you may be asking yourself, why would D.W. Griffith make a movie like Intolerance 8 hours long, which at the time was an ungodly amount, and even today is still an ungodly amount? The extended version of Lord of the Rings is only about 9 hours, and he made one movie that's 8 hours. His reason for making Intolerance was, after Birth of a Nation, people called him a racist. Now, for him, the blackface and all the other strange stuff going on in his movie was a-okay because he had grown up in the South with a father who's in the Confederate Army. So for him, this was normal stuff, no big deal, but for the people elsewhere, this was a huge deal. For some of them took it personally. So he made an entire movie called Intolerance because he couldn't tolerate all of that criticism, and that just destroyed his career. So much more could have happened if he hadn't made that movie, but he did, and one of the fathers of film died sad and alone, still paying off Intolerance. Now, as promised, we're going to go into further depth on some of the more important discoveries in film history. Like, one day, Méliès was filming a bus, and his camera jammed out of the blue. Well, not out of the blue, this was a homemade camera in the 1800s. This wasn't exactly a tried and true method of manufacturing, but it did the job. Now, once he got the camera unjammed, something amazing happened. A hearse had replaced the bus, and this created the illusion that the bus had disappeared and the hearse had appeared, creating the first jump cut. Now, nowadays this is used a lot. In fact, we're using it in our own film quite often, as you might notice. Like this.
Now the last part of our 3-part cinematic journey. The making of a film. Let's start at the very beginning, the birth of a movie, the spark that starts a fire, the writer. In order to even think about making a movie, you must have a screenplay for your production company to read. After this has been written, edited, and accepted by the producers, you now have to go through pre-production, and the first part of that is casting. The pain of open casting is excruciating. You must meet with people with no experience as well as people with tons of it. And even after you choose those perfect people, you're never quite sure about whether or not you made the right choice. There's more to pre-production than just casting though. You must finalize your screenplay, hire your DP, director of photography, and crew, get props, build sets, get costumes, special effects. Everything that is needed while filming will be gathered at this time. Once filming begins, the pressure is really put on the crew and the department heads. If one prop goes missing, it could easily throw off filming for weeks, maybe months. The DP is the equivalent to the cinematographer. They speak the language of cinema, and their job is to enhance the story with it. Filming usually takes anywhere between 6 to 12 months. After filming is wrapped, the editors gather and begin to piece together what you see on the big screen. Jump cuts, special effects, and basically the majority of what you see on screen is made and attached to the raw footage by these guys. They need to synchronize music, compose music, cut appropriately, and make the final product as emotionally driving and tear-jerking as they can. The process of making a film isn't easy, but thanks to the founding fathers who developed their ideas, we can now adapt theirs to create our own masterpieces. Exploration, encounter, exchange, the fundamental theme to any developing idea. This obviously does not exclude film, our topic. For centuries, scientists and mathematicians have been experimenting with images and neurological behavior to create what was known to be moving pictures. And way before that, we had more people trying to create still images. Centuries of exploring new techniques, encountering sudden discoveries, and exchanging those discoveries and techniques with other colleagues to further master craft. The message that we want to convey is that film isn't just a quick 5-minute one-shot video. It's a language. It's the cinematography, the acting, the editing, the story. It's the countless hours of work and effort put in by countless people to make a cinematic masterpiece. This is a hoax.